All right, we're back. I'm by myself, so that's why it took an extra couple seconds. How's everybody doing? A good vach. Today's shir, well, before the shir, today is 38 days in the Omer. Same as last night. Today's shir is being sponsored by Rabbi Waxman, Lili Nishmas' father, Yosef Baruch ben Pesach Zechron Levracha. I have a short email that I'm going to read in a minute. I usually don't do that, but for chashuv people like Rabbi Waxman. Today's shir is also being sponsored by Mati Middeldorf. This is a first. This is like an advertisement. I haven't seen this product yet, but Yosef Biliak saw it. He said it's amazing, especially in today's day and age. Mati Middeldorf, I'll tell you who he is, if you don't know who he is. He joined our shir in the middle of brachas, and he gave a tremendous speech by the bracha siyum. And he told everybody how he never learned, and he hasn't learned for over 20 years, and he's been very inspired. And actually, since then, he's been here every single day with his son. Most of the time, I don't know where his son is lately. But anyway, and he inspired that, I don't know if you remember that irreligious soldier, the title, whatever it was, title something, soldier to do the daf, and they met once, and the whole ma'aseh. That's Mati. So Mati, he has this very successful product. Believe it or not, you take a selfie of somebody, and you get all his vitals, his blood pressure, his heart rate, everything just from a selfie. Here it is on the phone. You can check it out. It's so today he's releasing it, or somewhere around now, for that tzlacha, the release of his new app, E-Vitals, at AI. Get your health vitals in a selfie. Check it out after the shir, of course. We'll put it up here, right over here. This came straight off of the printer a minute ago, so Yishkoich Mati. Again, not something we like to do to make advertisements, but for Mati, we'll do anything. I have an amazing email. Last week I got a bunch of great emails, and talking about Mati and that soldier. So Mati started learning, he has a son that's 20-something years old. He said he hasn't learned in over 20 years. So yes, when was it? On Daf Ayin, I read an email, and it says, I'm almost 70, and I haven't learned since high school. Remember Mati? Remember the email? It just occurred to me, I don't know why I didn't think about it then. I read the email when we were learning Daf Ayin, 70. And what's more amazing is that 70, Daf Ayin, is not really 70, it's almost 70. It's 69. So the guy was saying, I'm almost 70. That was the email that I read on Daf 70. Just to remember, very interesting. But here's another email. I hope I hold it together because I don't have any tissues here. When I read it the first time, I was falling apart. You guys are probably strong, chever manim. You don't care about this stuff, but this stuff touches me. Dear Rebelli, I would like to thank you for all that you do, for all the effort you put into the shir, making sure it comes out so clear. I wanted to comment on drinking with no bracha issue. I actually like that you don't make the bracha in front of everyone. To me, it's like a stolz to make a bracha in the middle of the shir. You know, like when the Rosh Hashiva is giving a big shmooze, and then he stops and makes a baruch atah, and everyone answers amen. It's a way to get everyone to pay attention or something. Okay, I'm all for that. I don't know what the problem is. That's not why I don't drink water. I don't make a bracha for a different reason. Also, I'm having trouble putting together your life story. It sounds like a fascinating story. I'm surprised Nachman Seltzer didn't write a book on you yet. Nachman always tells me that there's nothing really that he could write about me because every one of my stories has to be edited. There's always some sort of crazy angle that you can't really, I beat up this guy, killed that guy, in the jail, whatever. There's no real, okay. From what I put together, it sounds equal, if not more interesting than Rabbi Wallace's story. Born in Bnei Brak, off to Kensington, then to Far Rockaway. Well, I wasn't born in Bnei Brak. I was born in Lakewood. Lived in Long Beach, Far Rockaway. I did a lot. Yeah, my father liked to move around a lot. But I did live in Bnei Brak, off to Kensington, then off to Far Rockaway, and I think Chicago was there also. Learning in Karlin Stolin, and then Darche to Panovich and Tifrach. He forgot about, where was that? Hazini Faneint. Minkach. I learned in Minkach, of course. I learned in Tashbar. Do you know what Tashbar is? The most Haredi school in the world. I used to get hit walking to Mincha. A Rebbe would just walk over to us, smack us in the head for no reason. Because he didn't think we were walking quick enough. Not my Rebbe, another Rebbe. Okay, that's Tajbar. I learned there also for 3 months. Fine, that's that. They'll be in the next Nachman Seltzer book. An instant bestseller, he writes. On a more serious note, I like to comment on the feeling of the chevra. I really feel part of everyone. Like if you saw me, you know who I am. Also, a shout out to Avi Kamiansky for the entertainment. I mainly enjoy the shir because of you, Rebelli, but Avi has a part of it too. This is Avi, I told you. So you made it to one of my favorite emails, Avi, but one of the only people that enjoys Avi Kamiansky's entertainment during the shir. I actually, yet last night, when Avi put on the charts, I really thought it was a great idea, but I got a few emails and WhatsApps that it's really annoying because you can't see the Magid Shir, you only see the thing. I didn't realize because on my screen I was able to see a few people on the side, plus whatever. So I don't know if it's such a great idea yet to put those charts on Zoom. Now, but now to the main part of my letter. I was always the top guy in yeshiva. I learned 12 hours a day, spent hours on my notes. Ooh, I have to get it together now. Closest to my Rosh Hashiva, etc. The problem is I had an addiction. I didn't know it, but I did. Eventually caught up with me. A couple years into my marriage, I joined a 12-step program, and Baruch Hashem, I'm on my way to recovery. But as a result of all this, everything stopped. No learning, no davening, but then Daf Yomi started. It hurt my wife tremendously that I wasn't learning at all, though she understood. Her birthday was the day before started brachas, and my grandfather, who was nifta this year, was very into the Daf Yomi, and the biggest chus for him would be to learn the daf. So on my wife's birthday, I wrote her a letter, and at the end I wrote that I'll start the daf. And she burst into tears. The best tears I've ever made her shed. Your shir has helped me to be able to keep up this birthday present, and there are no words to describe our feelings about the shir, which helps me be able to do the daf. Top guy in yeshiva, stop learning. And that's what I was trying to tell the guys when they were asking me about the beard. I represent the yeshiva guy. There's a lot of yeshiva guys, because I learned in yeshiva, they go out to work, and then they forget about learning, they forget about lumdus, they forget about everything. So the point is, no matter what, wherever you came from, whoever you are, there's always a place in the day to learn Torah. And one of the ways is Daf Yomi. I know this is a long letter, but I hope you read it as at least part of it. No one knows who has an addiction. I hope people would get chizuk from this letter. And you never know, there might be some people listening who are addicted to something and need the chizuk of hearing this to help them. I'm not going to write out which program I'm in, but just in case someone hears, can use the help, and the initials are, I'm not going to read the initials. Thank you, Reb Eli, so much. Signed. Write this down if you want. goodjewinrecovery@gmail.com. goodjewinrecovery@gmail.com. You can say out the email address in case someone who needs help can reach out to me. So anyways, it's very emotional. The guy stopped learning Torah, and now he's back on the daf, and he's all the way through Shabbos. He started brachas Shabbos. We're 70 daf into Shabbos, so chazak v'ematz, we're all with you. Unbelievable. All right, and finally, we got to do this quickly. This is from Rav Pesach Waxman. He's a chashuv yid who comes and is in our Zoom share every day, and he already threatened me that he's going to stop coming to Zoom soon when everything goes back to normal. I'm not mikabel it, but listen, who knows? You never know. Maybe he'll be here. Orphaned at age 13. The Lili Nishmas Avi Meiri Yosef Baruch ben Pesach. Orphaned at age 13, fought in World War II for 3.5 years. Put on tefillin every day and refused to eat treif. Moved to Farakwe. Listen to the coincidence here. Moved to the Farakwe in 1954 and was the founder of, you listening, Avi Mandelbaum? Young Israel of Wavecrest and Bayswater. Because last night was Lili Nishmas, Avi Mandelbaum's grandfather, who put a mortgage, who helped buy the Young Israel of Wavecrest and Bayswater, and he's the founder of the Young Israel of Wavecrest and Bayswater. I guess it was a happening place over there. Beautiful houses. Today, I don't know. Joe Waxman was a living Kiddush Hashem, was Misameach people at hundreds of weddings, together with his brother. We learned in Pashas Emor, Babim Kashim Shemayim, to paraphrase the Rabbi Milchas Yisoidei HaTorah. Listen to this, because we're learning heavy sugyas. So it's good to have a little bit of musar here, that's why I'm reading it. If a chacham is careful of his actions, speaks pleasantly with people, and greets them with a cheerful face, if he bears insults, and does not respond in kind, if he accords people honor, even the lightheaded among them, if he deals honestly in business, goes beyond the letter of the law, to the point that everyone praises him, loves him, and strives to emulate his ways, this is Kiddush Hashem. My father is Zoichet to all his children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, all Hashem Ritayu mitzvahs. Unbelievable. Every single one. Many of them are in our Batzas HaTorah, Yehi Zichur Baruch. I know, well, I don't know his children, I know children-in-law. Reb Eli, thank you for saying Kaddish today on your yard Pesach Waxman, Yishkoach for Pesach for being a big part of the shir. It's a big honor, and let's learn some Torah. We're holding on Daf Ayin Aleph on Beis. We finished one of the hardest dapim in Masechta Shabbos, maybe in all of Shas, at least for Maggid Shir, to repeat. Reb Pesach Waxman told me I'm not allowed to say that a daf is hard before we start, so that's why I didn't tell anybody. I only told him at the end. I was looking for you last night. I didn't really see you. I don't know if you were on. But yeah, listen, it wasn't that hard. It was just another concept, and to explain it and to go through it, and one zayis, another zayis, half a zayis. Today, Baruch Hashem, is much easier, and a very short Amud Aleph, and Amud Beis is mamish, will fly through it. Amar Ula. Okay. All new concepts, people that haven't learned kachim with us. Asham Talui is the type of a carbon you bring instead of a chatos. It's a type of it's asham, similar, very similar to a chatos. Asham Tali means you bring it when you don't know if you did the Avera. Asham Vadi means you bring it when you know for sure you did the Avera. So, we have a machloikis. If a person has two pieces of chaylev in front of him, two pieces of meat, one is chaylev, one is a steak. One is kosher, one is not kosher. And he eats one, he doesn't know which one. So, he has to bring a Asham Tali. Now, according to Reb Tarfon, he could stipulate and make it night, and he could say, look, if I find out tomorrow that what I ate was in fact chaylev, then this Asham Tali that I brought should work for me. And he brings his keren, his chay, whatever, he brings his stuff. Now, we're talking about two pieces of meat that were hegdish. So he has to bring on the meila part, he would have to bring a keren and chay, extra fifth. But let's not bog down on the details. The point is, according to Reb Tarfon, if I find out tomorrow that I did an Aveira, it was definitely a piece of chaylev that I ate, then he has to bring, sorry, it's not a chaylev. Scratch that. The idea is the same. One was kodesh, one was chulin. Start from scratch. Two pieces of meat in front of him. One was kodesh, one was chulin. He doesn't know which one he ate. Did he eat the one from the Beis Hamikdash? He stole from Hashem and he has to bring a keren chaymen. Did he eat a regular piece of meat? He doesn't know. So he brings a Asham Tali. A day later, somebody told him, by the way, what you ate was 100% from the Beis Hamikdash. And he made a stipulation that if he finds out that it's in fact an Aveira what he did, then the Asham Tali that he brought today should work. So according to Reb Tarfon, it works. Now, just as a side note, the carbon that he brings later is the same exact carbon as he's bringing today. It's the same type of animal. Whereas a chatas, for instance, is a female. It's a completely different animal. Asham, the Asham Tali and the Asham that he brings afterwards, all the same. Okay. Now what do you see from this? You see from this a very interesting thing. That when he brought his carbon, he didn't have a yediyah. So remember yesterday we were talking about this. We're just going to talk about this for another 10-15 minutes and that's it for the rest of Shabbos. Not really, but he had a helam. He ate this carbon in a unawareness, and then he had a yediyah, he had a knowledge that he was over Naveira. But when did this knowledge happen? This knowledge happened 2 days after he brought the carbon. He brought a carbon tali, Asham Tali, meaning he didn't know if he did the Aveira, didn't do the Aveira. And it works for him. According to Reb Tarfon, it works. But he didn't have knowledge. He didn't have knowledge when he brought it. Why does it work? So you see that there's a man Omar, his name is Rabbi Tarfon, who says you don't need knowledge when it comes to Asham. Okay, that's Asham Vadei also. Because later on, I flipped his Asham Tali into Asham Vadei, and I said that the carbon that he brought on Sunday, even though I had no idea whether or not he did the Aveira, on Monday I found out he did the Aveira, the carbon I brought on Sunday works without knowledge. So Omar Ula, L'man da Omar Asham Vadei loy ba'i yediyah b'tchila. So listen what's going on here. If a person eats a piece of chaylev And then he has knowledge in between, and he eats another piece of chaylev. We said yesterday, he has to bring 2 korbanos. The knowledge separates. That's if knowledge accomplishes something. We just said it's not necessary to have knowledge. Even without knowledge, I could bring a carbon taloi, asham taloi, and it works. So if the knowledge doesn't accomplish anything, then the knowledge doesn't separate. So if so, says Ula, top of Ayin Beis Omid Aleph, Bal Chomish Bi Ilois. B'Shivcha Charufa. Shivcha Charufa is one of the Asham Vadais. Rashi brings down, there's 3 Asham Vadais. For eating or being moyal from Beis HaMikdash, taking something from Hekdesh, stealing and saying you didn't steal, and Asham Charufa. What's Asham Charufa? And that's what we're talking about. If a person has a Shivcha Knanas, a slave, a Goyish slave, he could marry her off, be Mekadosh her to his Evet Ivri, as a Jewish slave. He can make a shidduch, great shidduch. He takes that slave from whatever country she is, Mishadach, this Jewish guy. They're only Mikudish at this point. Comes along, let's say the master, he got confused, he didn't know what he was doing, he was drunk, whatever, he didn't chap that it's his shifcha, thought it's his wife, boiler. And then he had an awareness, somebody told him what he did, and then he was boiler again, and then he had an awareness, and then again, and then he had awareness. The guy's a nut. Every Motzei Shabbos he gets drunk, and every time it's the same story. 5 times in a row. Since an awareness, knowledge, doesn't affect an asham, it doesn't matter if you have an awareness or not. And by the way, asham is very interesting. If I'm boil a shivcha, charufa, an engaged shivcha, on purpose, what do? I bring a asham. And if I do it by accident, asham. It's the same kapara. Mazen and shaygig are the same. So this klutz, he keeps on having a forgetfulness. He keeps on forgetting what he's doing. Boil one time, he has an awareness. But if there was no awareness, then of course he's only chayiv 1. I'm talking about even if he was aware of what he did, I bring 1 carbon at the end of everything. Why? Because the awareness doesn't have an effect over here. According to Reb Tarfon, it doesn't have an effect. If it did have an effect, then it would be like yesterday, or like the case of chatos. I eat 1 piece of chaylev, and I had an awareness, I understood that what I just did was a mistake and it's asur, and then I eat another piece of chaylev, I have to bring a second chatos. So, Baal Chamesh Bilos B'Shiv Charufa, Einoi Chayv Elachas. 1 carbon. Maskif Rav Amnuna, this is like one of the funniest lines in all of Shas. And we have to remember this Rav Amnuna, because we're going to use this Rav Amnuna later on as a halacha. Elo me'ato, Baal v'chazaru Baal v'sh karban. So they take out the second time. It's not necessary to say he did it twice. He did it once, twice. I don't care how many times he did it. He was Baal Shiv Charufa, and he brings a carbon. He designates a carbon. He didn't shecht it yet. V'amar, and he tells the kohen, wait a second, do me a favor, don't shecht this carbon. Let me go home, and let me forget, and let me boil my shivcha charufa a second time. Because we're talking about forgetting. So he tells him, Hamtinu li ad she'evod. Could you wait for me? In other words, he's asking, this seems mamish ridiculous. I'm taking a carbon that I already designated, and I want to use it on a future aveira b'shoigig. How does that work? You're telling me I don't have to have an awareness, so maybe even after I'm mafresh a carbon, it should also work. What are you talking about? What's the comparison? Say, look, I'm talking about over here, where he had knowledge. And you're talking about the step further, hafrosha, designating carbon. Designating carbon puts a stop to everything. It starts all over designating. Just like you're asking to me, once I do a kapara, I shech the animal, I do this rika, whatever, I have a kapara. Obviously, I can't use an animal I shechted 5 days ago for an avera I did today. So too, once I designate a carbon, it's all over. Designation, kapara, should be the same thing like we learned yesterday. Designating is very strong. By the way, welcome. It's Motzei Shabbos. There's a lot of Americans on A lot of people from Chutz La'aretz, so welcome. I don't know if Shlomi Klein is on, but usually he's on Motzei Shabbos. I see Eli Dykman, but he's on every day anyway. All right. Maybe I'll take a look real quickly if you don't mind. I shouldn't be rude. Phil Baruch. Oh, Shlomi Klein is on. He's waving. Ezra Abrams from Australia. That's always a big one because I don't know what time zone it is over there, but it's crazy. Oh, we have a huge guest here. Noam Fix. Gewaldig. Wow. Unbelievable. Because Noam, I was thinking about you. Last night, you should have been on. You should have seen the charts. You understood last night Sugi by yourself. Come on, Noam. You needed this year. You know it. And it's not Motzei Shabbos. You're not going anywhere. Yeah. We already decided that during COVID you're going to be on this year. I missed you. All right, who's this big tzaddik over here? TYS. I don't know what that is, but we're going to go weiter. Oh, he's giving me a shtickle shmeichel. I like that. Weiter, we'll talk later in Yiddish. And Levi Friedman is on. Ooh, that's always a good thing. Weiter, somebody find out for me what TYS is, and we'll go weiter. And Eli Kamyansky is wearing a red bandana today. Okay. Is David Kornbluth on? Because yesterday he Zoom bombed everybody, and that was not so good. All right.
Mordechai Aaron is also from Sydney. He's on.
Mordechai Aaron from Sydney. Gewaldig. All right.
Center your YouTube.
What? And then we have Moshe Apter from Toronto. He's on. Beautiful. Moshe Apter, the tzaddik. I say it, a lot of people from Chutz La'aretz. Beautiful. So let's go weiter. It's a very geshmaki sugya. I'm serious. We have some unbelievable stuff coming up. We're going to talk about Purim. We're going to talk about Misasik on Shabbos. Great stuff.
Eli.
Yes.
Center YouTube. It's not
Oh.
centered. The camera.
You mean it's not centered on me or it's tilted?
Apparently not centered on you, says Yosef.
How about now? Where's Yosef? Better? Okay. Hopefully it's better. Zog the Gemara. Omar le Maisa de Lacha Rosh Hashanah. You're talking about you want to do an Aveira after you designated a carbon. Of course that doesn't work. Maisa de Lacha Rosh Hashanah. No. So just remember this line of Rav Amnuna that once I designate a carbon, then everything starts all over again. I can't use my carbon. I can use my carbon, one carbon for 5 be'ilois, if I only have yediyah, I have knowledge. But once I go to hafrasha, once I go to designation, that's a whole different story. Then the clock, then the whole thing starts all over again, and I have to bring a new carbon. Kiyasir Ravdimi Omar. Now, by the way, we're going to have a whole chazar on the sugya, a nice sikum, a nice synopsis on the sugya, and just a few lines when we finish the Amud, at the end of the Amud. Kiyasir Ravdimi Omar. Leman Omar Asham Vade Bayidiyah Betchila Surah Kiva, who argues in Ritarfin, and says no. Asham is just like a chatos. And I need to have an awareness, I need to know in between. So if I have an awareness, in other words, Rebbe Akiva says, I cannot bring my Asham Tali today and make a Tanai, a stipulation that if I find out that I was over Isser, this Asham Tali will work. I have to bring a completely another carbon, a second carbon. In other words, Rebbe Akiva holds, I have to have a yediyah. I have to know what's going on. I have to have knowledge when I bring my carbon. So if I have to have yediyah, that means the yediyah works. And if the yediyah works, then every time it works, I have to bring another carbon. So if that person was boil a shivcha charufa 5 times, but each time he had a yediyah, the yediyah works and it separates. So this person has to bring 5 karbanas. Then it would be chayav 5. What are you talking about? How can you say it's so pasha that's l'kula alma? Harichatos de bin yediyah betchila. Last night when we learned the sugya and everybody was into it, you wouldn't believe it, no, and I'm not kidding. Last night we had 100 people on Zoom, literally 100. By the time the shir was over, I thought I was going to look down, and I thought there's going to be 50 people left because we were flying from a 1.5 kazaysim together with another half, and the idea. And then, by the way, what's his name? Lauren asked me a very good question. But I saw that he was paying attention. People were paying attention. The idea on the 1.5 kazaysim, by the way, was only on the 1 kazais, not on the 1.5 kazais. He ate them 1.5 together. Lo b'shaneh. And I saw people's eyes were like this, but Lamaisa, the Olam stayed throughout the whole thing. It was unbelievable. Fine.
I spent the rest of the night trying to put the half olive together with the full olive and try to match it perfectly.
Why? But it doesn't go together. That's the whole sugya. It doesn't go together. That's why you cannot, even if you try, it won't go together. Anyway, weiter, we're now going to go backwards. Backwards, we said, is always usher. So, chatos, obviously, you need a knowledge. And if you have knowledge in between, it breaks it up, doesn't break it up. We had a whole shaila. Before the designation, is that when it breaks it up? After the designation, when does it become separate? According to Rish Lakish, Yediyah is not mechalik by a chatas. According to Rish Lakish, one carbon. What was the situation last night? Yesterday's daf. If a person eats 2 kizaisim of chaylev, one kizais and another kizais, typically one carbon would pater both. But what happened was he had a knowledge in between the two. Does that break it up? Yes or no? Rish Lakish says it does not break it up. And I bring one carbon for both. Rabbi Yochanan says it does break it up. But at least according to Rish Lakish, Yediyah, just knowledge, doesn't break it up. Even by a chatas. So why are you telling me that by a asham, knowledge breaks it up? As if everybody's masking to that. It's not true. Rish Lakish holds that knowledge doesn't break it up. Ishtik. He was quiet. L'chayr, you see from the end of the Gemara, when you first read it, ishtik means he had nothing to answer. He was dumbfounded. Wow. But if you see from the end of the Gemara, the reason why he was quiet is because he thought the question didn't even start. That's why ishtik. So, he did one of these things when I was younger. My father used to do this to me all the time. Maybe what you mean to ask, that's what you meant, Eliyahu. You probably meant to ask this. Okay, so he says, he tells him, he explains to him. But that was really what he asked. Remember, Rav Hamnuna, I told you to remember Rav Hamnuna. Once you designate the carbon, yes, everything starts all over again. I have to bring another carbon for my next action because it's all over. Once I designate a carbon for action number 1, I can't tie into that carbon other actions. It's done, it's over. It's as if I shechted it. Everybody agrees, once I slaughter the animal, I shecht the animal, and I eat the animal, I can't do another aver and say, oh, but 6 weeks ago I brought a carbon, it should work. No, it starts all over once I shecht. So when I designate, it's like shechting, right? Anybody that learned kachim knows what I'm talking about. He says, yes, that's exactly what I was asking. That's exactly what I was saying. In other words, once I'm mafresh, then everything starts over again. Now, just to recap this whole sugya it's almost the same amount of words, because you look, it's half amid, but it gives a very clear understanding of what's going on here. He says like this, Kiyasa Rav and Omar, Hakol Moedim, everybody agrees. Who's everybody? Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, who argue that if there's a knowledge in between 2 chatois, if there's a chaylev and I had a knowledge in between them, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that separates the two, I have to bring 2 karbanas. According to Rish Lakish, that does not separate it. So according to everybody, b'shivcha charufa, which is an asham, everybody, so we'll see in a second. Akol moedim b'shivcha charufa. V'akol moedim b'shivcha charufa, u'machlekes b'shivcha charufa. In other words, there's 2 cases that everybody agrees on, and there's 1 case that will be a machlekes. And he explains. Hakol moedim b'shivcha charufa de'enu chayev ela achas k'de'ula. Ula's case, that according to Rebbe Tarfon, that it says that you don't need knowledge. So if you don't need knowledge, and a person was over 5 times with knowledge, but since I don't need knowledge, so the knowledge doesn't accomplish anything, so the 5 be'ilos are all together in 1, and I can be yotze with 1 carbon. And there's a case where I'm chayiv on each and every act. Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna said that once I designate the carbon, and then I do another act, I need to bring another carbon on the second act, because I cannot tie in the second act to the first act, because designating carbon is a full stop. And there's a machloikis in shivcha harufa between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. According to Rabbi Kiva, that says that when it comes to nasham, I do need to have knowledge. Knowledge does accomplish something. Machlaikis Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. So now I have a machlaikis. According to Rabbi Yochanan, Yediyah is mechalik, and I have to bring 2 karbanas. According to Rish Lakish, Yediyah is not mechalik, so I only bring 1. So in other words, it's like a chatos. Just like by Chatas we had the same exact question. Is Yidin Mechalik, not Mechalik? So by Yoshim, is Yidin Mechalik, not Mechalik? That's the Mechalik, Rabbi Yochanan Shlakish. All right, we're done. Finished. Brand new sugya, for real. Brand new topic. Great stuff. Could apply basically to everyone, every day, every Shabbos. You agree with me, Rabbi Yisai, that if I'm walking to shul and I step on a bunch of ants on the way to shul, everybody agrees what? Am I chayiv, not chayiv? Not chayiv at all. Otherwise I wouldn't walk to shul. I don't have to bring a carbon. Why is that not called a shaygig? I killed an ant b'shaygig. Why is it not a shaygig? Because that's what we call a misasik. He's preoccupied. He's not even thinking about killing the ant. It's not like he thought the ant is dead and he stepped on it. That's a shaygig. I see the ant, I want to step on it because I think it's dead, but it happens to be alive, so, I killed something that I thought was dead. Over here he's just walking. The guy that's walking to shul and steps on something, he's not chayiv, misasik. Okay. Therefore, miskaven lagbias atolosh, daf ein bezon bezon tab. Miskaven lagbias atolosh v'chotach as a mechubar. If a person, says Rashi, interesting case, doesn't fit so well into the words, Tosfos doesn't like it so much. Rashi says, a person has a knife on the ground, and his intent was to lift up the knife, just to bring it to himself. But he lifted up the knife, and by mistake he cut a branch. He cut a fruit off the ground. That's like stepping on an ant. That's a misasik. So everybody agrees, niskaven like bias atolosh, he wanted to lift up a knife. V'chotach zemechubar, potter. Tosfos is medayik from Rashi. What if he was mechaven? He was mechaven for another branch. He thought the branch is not attached, but it was attached. What's the halacha then? Over here he's just trying to lift up a knife. He didn't want a branch. He didn't want to cut at all. He didn't want to cut at all, so then you can't be mechayiv him on anything. But what if he wanted to cut a branch that's already cut? But it turns out the branch wasn't cut. It seems like from Rashi, he would be chayiv. And Tosfos asked many questions on that. You see that's not the case. What if a person throws a baseball 8 feet, but it ended up going 16 feet? He's potter. So you see that you have to have a pure intent. Okay, that's why Tosfos says the whole pshat is that he was mechaven to lift up a fruit that's detached, not a knife, a fruit that's detached, and he by mistake cut off a fruit that was attached. But let's learn like Rashi, like we always do. He tried to lift up a knife, and without his knowledge, it happens all the time. He lifts something up, and by mistake he cut something. He was over on Ktsira on Shabbos. By mistake, complete misasik, potter. There's no machlokes over here. That's considered preoccupied. If he was trying to cut the talosh, so Tosfos is saying it in this case. Forget about what I said before. Scratch. Much of Shabbos learning. He was trying to cut a fruit that was disconnected. So according to Rashi, it's 2 fruits. One is over here. He was trying to cut an apple that's over here, but it's disconnected. And what happened was, he cut a second apple. He's trying to cut a red one, and he actually ended up cutting a green one. They're 2 separate apples. According to Tosfos, it's the same apple, just he thought that it's connected, it's disconnected and it's connected. Let's go according to Rashi. So he's cutting a talush. He thought that he's cutting an apple that's completely disconnected, but he ended up cutting another fruit that's connected. Rava Omar Potter. That's considered a misasik. Abai Omar Chayav. Rava says he wasn't trying to cut something that was mechuber. He wasn't trying to do an isra. Abai says Chayav. Rava Omar Potter. Why the halachic skaven chaticha di isura? It's an interesting play on words. A lot of times we use the lashon chaticha di isura, meaning like a piece of chaylev is a chaticha di isura. Over here it means the cutting, the literal cutting of isur. He wasn't trying to cut and do ktsira and reap a fruit. He was trying to cut something that was already cut. Like we do every Shabbos, we cut apples in half. You're allowed to do that. Abai says no, he's chayav because at the end of the day, he wanted to cut. It happens to be he didn't think that it was attached, but he was trying to cut. Just like if you step on an ant, you wanted to step on the ant, you just thought that he's alive, he's dead, but he happens to be alive. That might be an Isser. How do I know this? The Sanya, Chomer Shabbos Mishar Mitzvahs, V'Chomer Shar Mitzvahs Mishabbos. So now we're going to take this all the way down to the bottom, basically, to understand this line. What does it mean that Shabbos is more stringent than other mitzvahs? And sometimes other mitzvahs are more stringent than Shabbos. What does it mean? So let's analyze it. Let's understand. We're going to go through a few attempts and fail until we get to our attempt. The final one. Chomer Shabbos Mishar Mitzvahs. Shabbos also shtayim behelam echad. Chayav al kol achas v'achas. And we're going to explain what this means. Maybe it means, hold on, if on Shabbos he does 2 averos, 2 malachas, let's call it k'tzir and tchina, the Gemara is going to explain it specifically. He does 2 averos in 1 awareness, he's chayiv 2, we'll explain. Masha'en kein, shar mitzvahs. So let's say 8 chaylev, 2 pieces, in 1 awareness, he's not chayiv. The Gemara is going to explain. And how's the reverse? How are all mitzvahs more stringent than Shabbos? In all the other mitzvahs, if he did a shagig without intent, he's chayiv. On Shabbos, you have to know what you're doing. We'll explain. The Gemara explains. So yesterday's example, a person is doing k'tzira, tchina, reaping and grinding. You're not allowed to reap wheat, you're not allowed to take fruit off a tree, you're not allowed to grind on Shabbos. 2 separate melachas. He did these 2 separate melachas, and we're saying he's chayiv 2. And you would have to do 2 separate averis too. So it would be like the example we gave last night, same today. Chaylev dam, 2 isurim of eating. Chaylev dam, hachetarte mechayev, hachetarte mechayev. Wait a minute, then there's no difference between Shabbos and everything else. If I'm chayev 2 by Shabbos, I'm chayev 2 by chaylev and dam. If the case is that it's 2 separate averas, then you chayev 2 in both examples. Okay, next. Elashar mitzvahs the loy mechayev el chodei chedami. So if it's talking about that he ate 1 type, it's not chaylev and dam. He ate 2 pieces of chaylev, and I'm chayev what? 1. We said in chaylev, if it's in 1 awareness, you eat 2 pieces of chaylev in 1 awareness, you chayev 1. No, and if I compare that to Shabbos, same thing. If I do k'tzira and k'tzira, yesterday we had it much worse. He did the k'tzira, forgetting that it's Shabbos, and then he did k'tzira, forgetting that the malach is asur, it's still considered 1. You bring 1 carbon for both. I don't want to confuse you, but in just a regular case of Shabbos, k'tzira, and he paused for 5 minutes, did the k'tzira again, 1 carbon. So it can't be that. So the Gemara comes up with a new attempt. Loilam, so what's the difference between Shabbos and all the mitzvahs? It's not all the mitzvahs, Rabbi Yisai, says the Gemara. But the Gemara goes away from this. But at least for the Havamim, it's not all the mitzvahs. It doesn't mean all the other Averas. It's talking about 1 Avera called Avodah Zarah. It's a little bit of a doicha because it's called Shar mitzvahs. It doesn't say mitzvahs, Shar. All the other mitzvahs it sounds like. Okay. So in fact, by Shabbos, he did 2 separate Averas. And what are we referring to? Avodah Zarah. Look at the Rebbe Ami. The Rebbe Ami. Zibach, Vikiter, Venisach, Ba'alom Achas. If a person did 3 types of Avodah Zarah, he shechted an animal for Avodah Zarah, he brought an animal onto Mizbeach for Avodah Zarah, and he poured wine for the Avodah Zarah. He did 3 completely different Avodah Zarahs, but they were all in 1 awareness, according to Rabbi and Ichai Velachas. Whereas on Shabbos, if he did Ktsira and Tchina, and he forgot that these malachas are asur, he would have to bring 2 korbanos. So now the Gemara tells us like this. I'll just tell you about Peh real quickly. If a person doesn't know that this is Avodah Zarah, right? Or, sorry, this is not Avodah Zarah. Let's start with the first. This is not Avodah Zarah. This is 100% not Avodah Zarah, and he bowed down to it. Chayev or potter? Potter. It is not Avodah Zarah. Now, what about if he thought that this is not Avodah Zarah, but he bowed down to it? He thought he's bound down to a Sefer Torah, but it happens to be that there's a getchka inside. Chayev or potter? Potter. And the third case, which is also potter, what if somebody bowed down to this? This is 100% Avodah Zarah, but he bowed down to it because he feared for his life. Potter. So in these three cases, he's potter. So now the Gemara goes through it all. Avodah Zarah, what's the case? Ema Seifa. So you tell me we're talking about Shar Mitzvahs is referring to Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah. Ema Seifa. Let's analyze this. Chomer b'Shar Mitzvahs. What's the stringency of Avodah Zarah? Sheb'Shar Mitzvahs shogag b'lo miskaven chayav. Whoa! It says in the Seifa that if you do something b'shogeg, you are chayav. Time out. That's not true. By Avodah Zarah, it's not true. Mashayim b'Shabbos. Hay shogeg b'lo miskaven. Avodah Zarah chidami. What does it mean? Now, just right off the bat, Rashi points out here, you can't talk about that he didn't know that Avodah Zarah is asur, because then it wouldn't be below miskaven. Below miskaven means I know that Avodah Zarah is asur, but right now I don't have intent. So what's the case? He thought he's in a shul. At the end of the day, his heart was in the right place. So that's not Avodah Zarah. If I think I'm in a shul and I'm bowing to the Aron Kodesh, what happens to be Avodah Zarah? Not a problem. So he sees a statue. Let's say he's in Washington, D.C., and he sees Lincoln. And he bows down to Lincoln. Also a mutter? Well, depends. If he says Lincoln is my Rebbeinu Shalom Chas v'Shalom, Mezidu. So why is that not a regular Avodah Zarah? That's amazing. That's not the case that we're talking about. We're talking about shogeg. Bowing to Lincoln is nothing. If it's not Avodah Zarah, it's shtusim. Elo, we have to say a third case. Me'ahava u'me'ira. He loves a certain person, a certain individual. I mean, let's say it happened to Klal Yisrael. The Goyim fooled them. They said, you want our daughters? Do Avodah Zarah. So out of love. So they went and the pa'ar, the whole thing, they did Avodah Zarah out of love because they wanted to be with these women. Okay? You're not allowed to do it, of course, but if you do it, potter. Tosfos points out right away. What's me'ira? I fear for my life. Somebody put a gun to my head, I did Avodah Zarah. Potter. Wait a minute. Tosfos asks a kasha. Everybody knows, every kid in Cheder knows that if somebody points a gun to your head and says, do Avodah Zarah, you have to give up your life. Says Tosfos, you're right. You have to give up your life. But he didn't. Now what? He didn't. What carbon does he bring? 0. He should have given up his life. You have to be moiser nefesh, but he didn't. So right now he doesn't bring a carbon. According to Abaye that says Mahava Meir Yechayev, okay. El Rav Adama Patur, according to Rav, it says that if you didn't do the halacha, you didn't give up your life, you still Patur, my ikele meimar, over here. So according to Rava, what are we going to do? He thinks that it's mutar. Mashaykim b'shab is the Patur legamrei. Okay, so maybe we could stop here, but look in Tosfos real quickly. We have to see this Tosfos, very important for Purim. Tosfos Dibur Maskil Rava Amar Pater, big giant Tosfos. And Tosfos all the way at the end says, Vim Toimar. If Mordechai was fearful for his life, this is the famous Tosfos, right? I think a lot of people know this Tosfos when we're talking about Purim. How come Mordechai Tzaddik didn't bow down to Haman? He feared for his life. He should be Pater. Says Tosfos that Haman, in addition to the fearing of his life, he had Avodah Zarah on his chest, like a lot of Goyim have a cross, whatever. Avodah Zarah. He didn't want to bow, not to Haman. He wasn't concerned about Haman. Haman might have been, he could have gotten away with it. Ha Meira. But the tzuros is the problem. the Avodah Zarah that he had. V'oid mishum kiddush Hashem. Maybe he wasn't chayev, but he should have been mekadosh. He wanted to be mekadosh Hashem. Kiddush kacham b'Yerushalmi Masechet Shvius Perek Dal Kigon Papus v'Lulinus Achiv Shenos Lam Mayim B'Schuchas Tzvua says Taisves and says in Masechet Shvius they gave them water. Papus and Lulinus, famous story. They anyways gave up their life to save Klal Yisrael. They took the blame on killing the king's daughter. But anyway, it says that they gave them a cup with Avodah Zarah on it, and you're allowed to drink from such a cup. V'lo kiblu mehem. They decided they're going to give up their life, even though halachic you're allowed to drink from such a cup, because of Shem Shomayim. So Mordechai also wanted to be Mekadesh Shem Shomayim. Let me just see if we should go weiter now because it's in the middle of a sugya. Elo boim mutem Hashem b'Shabbos the potel legamri akol le boim minei Rav Mirav Nachman Elo lichiyuvei chada lichiyuvei tarte. Ask the Gemara. At the end of the day, Rav only asked Rav Nachman. He took it for granted. You chayav at least one chatas. He said, "Are you chayav one or two?" Ava mifter legamri loy. But to say that he's potter completely not. Avodah Zarah we're saying that you're potter completely. If you're doing it mahav meira, but Rav understood that you at least chayav one. What's going on here? So in other words, it cannot be Avodah Zarah. So the Gemara is going to go away from Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah we just said if it's b'shaygeh, you potter completely. You don't bring one. And Rav was asking, do you bring one or two? But one, of course, you chayav. El Rav Reisha Avodah Zarah v'seifa b'shar mitzvos. So I guess we'll see the sugya tomorrow. Unfortunately, we'll just continue tomorrow over here. So the Gemara just says that we have to split it up. Yes, the first part is talking about Avodah Zarah, but the second part, they're asking me all these questions, is referring to the other mitzvahs. Have a wonderful day. See you tomorrow at 7:15. Noam Tehillim. Shir Malois, mi mama kim kosucha Adonai, Shema b'koli, Yino zach yashu, B'avnei zishmo yad, Kimcha slicho, Liman tivavei, Yizadina kivzon nafshi l'doi cholti, Nafshi l'Adonai, Im shemri l'boiker, shemri l'boiker, This way, Mikol,
everyone can unmute themselves if they want to.
Mati, you should have a lot of atzlacha. It's coming out at the right time. No, this is what the world needs. Imagine if with a cell phone you could see whether or not somebody has corona. That's basically it, right?
No, not yet. But it's oxygen saturation and heart rate and what's called the variables. Working on blood pressure.
Saturation, that's very good.
Yeah. Slowly but slowly keep it going.
Wow.
Heart rate, variable heart rate, and stress level.
Arav Tzviki Shor, where are you from? You can unmute yourself if you want. If not, you don't have to. You don't have to. Yerushalayim. Very nice. Welcome, welcome. A new face. I don't recognize it. You might have been here, but I never saw you. So welcome.
Talmud installed.
What?
I learned in the same yeshiva you did.
In Stalin, Carol in Stalin? I was not there for a very long time. I forgot how many months. I don't know, 6, 7, who knows? I used to go from yeshiva to yeshiva. My father would say, this is good for you, this is not. So we were talking about Rabbi Pilchik. You remember Rabbi Pilchik? He was in Carolyn Stalin? You remember him? The one that used to wear masks. I don't know. He was in Darchi Torah in Farakwe, but I remember him in Carolyn Stalin also. I remember he was a Rebbe there. I think it was him.
Amazing Shir Rebelli. It was the best shir I've ever heard. I don't think I'll ever have a hell of a time ever again in my life.
Noam, is that you feeding him what to say? During shir, like, ask Eli about the Helam Dover, because he's busy on texting and WhatsApping. Yeah. Yeshua, first of all, what Masechta are we in? I saw you texting something about that the art scroll is about to be over. I saw it popped up on the screen in the middle. So you know what Masechta we're in. Great. All right, Yishkoyach to you. Yishkoyach everybody.
Someone needs to say Kaddish today. I found the 6 o'clock minion.
Who is this? Rabbi Waxman?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm saying Kaddish anyways. I have somebody else that I'm saying Kaddish for, but it's okay, fine. You say Kaddish. You're the one that has to say Kaddish. Razi Shoshana Bas Mordechai Tzvi HaKoyen. I have to say Kaddish for this person also. Yes.
Do you remember my family? Harold and Frank Randall, Aaron?
A few people are talking. I don't hear.
Tell me, this Rabbi Kutzi,
Yes.
he used to come to South Africa.
I have no idea. I knew him when I was 5 years old. I was in Darchei Torah. After lunch, he used to put on a mask and come in and scare the kids. And then, I wasn't scared. It was geschmack. It was great. And that's it. Every day. And then I saw him in Karl and Stalin. I think he was in Karl and Stalin also.
There were two pilgrim brothers who used to come to collect from America in South Africa.
So Tzviki Shor is saying yes. Yes, they are the same. It's the ones.
In the Kaddish Torah.
When did he have time to do that? Did he wear masks in South Africa also?
I think it's feed by Pesach and chicken by
They actually set up a group for kids. They set up a group of boys who used to learn Mishnah and others, and they used to give us sweets.
Tzviki, I'll just explain to you. You're talking to Rabbi Bernard David. He's the head of the Chabura. There's a Chabura, a bunch of guys that sit in Manchester and they learn the daf with us. So he runs that group. That's who you're talking to. You're talking to a person in Manchester now. But I guess he used to be from South Africa, Rabbi Bernard David.
Yeah, used to be. I was with your friend Welcher. Him and I are good friends.
Really? Leon Welcher. Wow.
Leon Welcher and I know each other really well.
I didn't know that.
I also know Leon Welcher. I put it together in
You know
school.
what I found out the other day? The Rabbi David's son and I were at Aish together.
Really?
Yeah.
Leiby?
Not Levi.
Oh.
No, Mordechai used to work in the office in Aid.
Ah. Leiby listens to the daf every day. I think he's the only person in the world that listens to this Zoom share on a telephone because he doesn't have internet. So every single day, he... Hey, do you know Rabbi David, did Leiby take the test on 120 daf on Friday?
I think he did, but he doesn't say.
120 daf. The whole brachas and a bunch of Shabbos, 60 daf into Shabbos. It's amazing. Yeah, we're part of a chabura that takes these tests. What?
Then switch off YouTube so I can start downloading.
Okay. No, the Olam likes when I leave it on a little bit.
Already?
Okay. Turning off YouTube.